They sat at the small kitchen table, drinking tea while Emily played with the dollhouse on the living room floor. They talked quietly about their lives, about loss and struggle and the small moments of grace that keep us going. Margaret told him about Emily's father, who'd left before the baby was born, about working 3 jobs and still barely making rent. Daniel told her about Sarah, about how the cancer had taken her so quickly, about how he'd thrown himself into work, because he didn't know what else to do with the grief. "I think," Margaret said softly, "that your wife would be proud of what you did tonight." Daniel's eyes grew bright. "I think she would have liked you. Both of you." Outside, the snow continued to fall. Inside, the little Christmas tree blinked its colored lights, and a small girl played with her new dollhouse, humming a Christmas carol off-key. And 2 lonely people, brought together by a child's hopeful letter, found something they'd both been missing. Not romance, not some fairy tale ending, just connection, just the knowledge that they weren't alone, that in this big, sometimes harsh world, there were still moments of unexpected kindness, still people who cared, still reasons to hope. When Daniel finally left near midnight, Margaret walked him to the door. "Thank you," she said, "for everything, for seeing us, for caring." "Thank you," Daniel replied, "for letting me be part of your Christmas, for reminding me why the season matters." He paused on the porch, then turned back. "I'd like to visit again, if that would be all right. Maybe bring some books for Emily, maybe just be friends." Margaret smiled. "We'd like that very much." As Daniel walked to his car, he looked up at the falling snow and felt, for the first time in 3 years, like he might be okay. Like maybe, just maybe, the world was still full of good things. Small miracles wrapped in red paper and tied with golden bows. On Christmas morning, Emily woke early and ran to show her mother the dollhouse again. "Mommy," she said, "I think Santa got my letter after all." "Yes, baby," Margaret said, holding her daughter close. "I think he did." And in his house across town, Daniel sat by his own small tree, looking at the photograph of Sarah. "I helped someone today," he whispered to her. "I remembered. I'm going to be okay." The morning light came through the windows, soft and golden. And somewhere in 2 different homes, 2 different hearts felt a little less broken, a little more whole. That's what Christmas is really about, after all. Not the presents or the decorations or the grand gestures. Just people seeing each other, helping each other, reminding each other that we're all in this together. One small act of kindness at a time. One letter, one knock on a door, one moment of connection in a world that so often feels disconnected. That's the real gift, and it's one we can give every day, if only we remember to try. The snow fell softly that December evening, the kind of gentle snowfall that makes the world seem quieter, kinder somehow. Margaret Hayes stood at her kitchen window, watching the flakes drift past the dim streetlight. Her daughter Emily, just 4 years old with those bright copper curls, was already asleep. Margaret's hands were wrapped around a cup of tea that had gone cold an hour ago. She was tired. The kind of tired that settles into your bones when you've been working double shifts at the diner and still wondering how you'll pay the heating bill. But there was something else on her mind tonight. Earlier that day, Emily had asked her to mail a letter, not to the North Pole, as Margaret had expected, but to Santa at the corner office. Margaret had found the letter on the kitchen table, written in Emily's careful, crooked handwriting. Most of it was pictures, a little girl holding hands with a mommy, a Christmas tree, a house with a chimney. And at the bottom, in letters Emily must have worked so hard to form, "Dear Santa, we need help. Love, Emily." Margaret had cried then. She'd cried standing right there at the kitchen table, holding that piece of paper in her shaking hands. She hadn't mailed it. How could she? It would just end up in some dead letter pile somewhere. But she'd kept it, tucked it into her apron pocket like a talisman of her daughter's innocent hope. Across town, in an office building that stood dark and empty on a Saturday evening, Daniel Whitmore sat at his desk. He was 53 years old, the CEO of a manufacturing company his father had built. His hair was graying at the temples now, and he wore a dark coat even inside, because the building's heat was turned down for the weekend. On his desk sat a photograph, his wife Sarah smiling in the sunshine. She'd been gone 3 years now, and the holidays were still the hardest. Daniel had come into the office because his house felt too empty. too quiet, too full of memories of Christmas mornings that would never come again. He was sorting through mail, mostly bills and business, correspondence when he found it. A small envelope addressed in a child's handwriting. Santa at the corner office. Someone in the mailroom must have thought it was meant for him, or maybe they just didn't know what else to do with it. Daniel opened it carefully. Inside, he found the drawings, the little family, the Christmas tree, and those words, "We need help." He sat very still for a long moment. Sarah used to volunteer at the children's hospital every Christmas. She'd said that helping others was what made the season meaningful. Daniel hadn't done much of anything charitable since she'd died. He'd been too lost in his own grief. But looking at this letter now, something shifted in his chest. He could ignore it. Probably should ignore it. It wasn't really addressed to him after all, but he didn't want to. For the first time in 3 years, he felt something other than the hollow ache that had become his constant companion. He felt purpose. It took Daniel 2 days to find them. The return address on the envelope led him to a small apartment building on the east side of town. Building C, Apartment 7. Now standing outside in the snow on Christmas Eve, holding a wrapped gift in his hands, Daniel felt suddenly uncertain. What was he doing here? This was someone's home, someone's private life. What right did he have to show up like this? But then he thought of Sarah, of her gentle voice saying, "Sometimes people just need to know that someone cares, Daniel. That's all, just that someone noticed." He climbed the steps carefully. The wooden porch creaked under his weight. Through the window, he could see warm light inside. A small Christmas tree blinking with colored lights. He knocked. Margaret had just finished tucking Emily into bed when she heard the knock. She wasn't expecting anyone. For a moment, she considered not answering at all, but something made her walk to the door. When she opened it, she found a man standing there in the snow. He was well-dressed with kind eyes and graying hair, holding a large red gift box with a gold bow. "I'm sorry to disturb you," he said softly. "My name is Daniel Whitmore. I received a letter." From Emily. Margaret's hand went to her mouth. "Oh God, the letter. May I come in? Just for a moment?" Margaret hesitated, then stepped back. Daniel entered quietly, brushing snow from his shoulders. Inside, the apartment was small but clean. The furniture was worn but cared for. On the coffee table sat a jar with a few dollars and coins inside. A label read, "Christmas Fund." "I didn't mail it," Margaret said quickly. "I don't know how you—" "I never meant for anyone to actually—" "It came to my office," Daniel said gently. "Someone must have found it and sent it there. I'm the CEO of Whitmore Manufacturing. My building is on the corner of 5th and Main." "The corner office," Margaret whispered. "Yes." They stood there for a moment in silence. "I'm sorry," Margaret said, her voice breaking. "Emily, she's only 4. She doesn't understand. I work as hard as I can, but it's just the 2 of us and things have been—" "You don't need to explain," Daniel said. He held out the gift. "I'd like Emily to have this, if that's all right with you." Margaret looked at the box, then at him. "Why would you do this? You don't know us." Daniel was quiet for a moment. Then he said, 3 years ago, I lost my wife, Sarah. She used to say that the world was full of people carrying invisible burdens, and that the least we could do was lighten someone's load when we could." He set the box down gently on the coffee table. "I haven't done much of anything good since she died. I've just been existing, going through the motions. But when I found Emily's letter, I remembered what Sarah always said. That kindness doesn't need a reason. It just needs a willing heart." Margaret's eyes filled with tears. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything." At that moment, a small voice came from the hallway. "Mommy?" Emily stood there in her red pajamas. Her copper curls tousled from sleep, rubbing her eyes. "Oh, sweetheart," Margaret said. "I'm sorry. Did we wake you?" Emily looked at Daniel with wide, curious eyes. Then she noticed the big red box. "Are you Santa?" she asked. Daniel smiled. It was the first real smile he'd felt in a long time. "No, sweetheart. I'm just someone who got your letter." "My letter to Santa at the corner office?" "That's right." Emily walked over slowly, still looking at him with that mix of wonder and uncertainty that only children have. "Mommy says Santa knows when people need help," Emily said. "We need help because Mommy is tired all the time and we don't have enough money for Christmas." "Emily," Margaret said softly, her face flushing. but Daniel knelt down so he was at Emily's level. Your mommy is working very hard to take care of you. That makes her very special. And sometimes when people work that hard, they deserve a little extra help. That's what neighbors are for. Are you our neighbor? Emily asked. I'd like to be, Daniel said. He gestured to the box. Would you like to see what's inside? Emily looked at her mother, who nodded, wiping her eyes. The little girl carefully lifted the lid. Inside, wrapped in tissue paper, were warm winter clothes, a coat with a fur-lined hood, mittens, boots. And beneath that, a collection of books and a beautiful wooden dollhouse with tiny furniture. But there was something else. An envelope. Margaret picked it up with shaking hands. Inside was a check. More money than she made in 6 months at the diner. I can't accept this, she whispered. Please, Daniel said. Let me do this. Not because you need it, though I know you do, but because I need it. I need to remember what it feels like to be part of the world again, to help, to matter. Margaret looked at him, really looked at him, and saw the sadness in his eyes, the loneliness that mirrored her own. Would you like to stay for some tea? She asked softly. Daniel had been about to leave. It was the polite thing to do, to give them their privacy, their Christmas Eve. But he found himself saying yes, or Hood. Emma, now 8 years old, does her homework at the corner table after school. Regular customers know them both by name, and once a month, like clockwork, James Whitmore stops by for coffee and conversation. He never asked for thanks, never expected recognition. But Claire made sure that on the wall behind the counter there's a small plaque. It reads, in memory of David Morgan, who taught us about love, and in gratitude to James Whitmore, who taught us about kindness. Sometimes Claire thinks back to that terrible day in the cemetery. The humiliation, the grief, the fear. But mostly, she remembers the moment when someone knelt beside her in the dirt and offered his hand. Because that's when she learned the most important lesson of all, that in our darkest moments, the smallest act of human kindness can change everything. And sometimes, just sometimes, a stranger becomes the family we needed all along.